Welcome to Meno Musings, our monthly podcast, where we invite guests along to speak about all topics related to the menopause. Today, we're going to be talking about hypnotherapy and how hypnotherapy can help relieve symptoms during perimenopause and menopause. And I'm joined to help me with this discussion by Kerry Dolan. Now, Kerry is a qualified hypnotherapist. She is a trained NLP and life coach and has worked for over 10 years in the field of women's health and well-being. And interestingly, Kerry first got into hypnotherapy during the birth of her first child when her midwife suggested she may want to try hypnobirthing. And Kerry was so impressed and felt so empowered by hypnobirthing that she decided to train in hypnobirthing and went on to train in other areas of hypnotherapy, including supporting women going through perimenopause and menopause. Welcome, Kerry, to Meno Musings.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I can't wait to get this conversation going.
Yeah.
You know, I have an idea of what hypnotherapy is, but I know that it's not yet widely used or known even as a way to help relieve menopause symptoms. So I'm thinking a good place to start is just to give some understanding of what is hypnotherapy, and I guess also what is it not?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think where hypnotherapy gets a really bad rap is that for most people, their experience of hypnosis is seeing stage shows. And hypnotherapists it's interesting, actually, I read a lot of neuroscience. Hypnotherapy predates neuroscience. So it's a kind of started out as a more intuitive understanding,
It's all right.
of how the brain works. So hypnotherapists are able to harness the way that the brain naturally works. In stage hypnotherapy, that is used to give the illusion of control over participants, but what you don't tend to see in that is there's quite a big selection process, because very few people are actually that suggestible, and so there's a limited amount of people who are willing to go, because there is you cannot take control of somebody's mind in the way that gives the illusion that you can, whereas hypnotherapy is about giving people understanding of the way that their mind works, and tools and techniques and access to controlling themselves, to understanding how to access parts of them that are useful, or understand things that may be triggers and things that are going on for them, and being able to have the tools to unpick that.
And so how does that knowledge and that understanding of how our brains work, how can that then be fed into helping from a menopause perspective and helping to manage menopause symptoms?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways. One of the things that we can do is access states. So a state might be a state of feeling calm, or also it might be, a temperature. So you can see immediately that would be something you could use for hot flushes. You can teach people, because the brain stores and remembers every state that you've ever been in. But it's a bit like if you're not very techie and you have a computer, you might have stuff on your computer, but it doesn't mean you can access it. So we have all these states. So for example, somebody, sorry, frog in my throat this morning, somebody who is a really nervous speaker, you can usually, if I was talking to somebody who wanted more confidence public speaking, I would get them to think about a time when they feel comfortable speaking. So that might be to a loved one, it might be to a pet, there will be some place where that person feels comfortable speaking. And so when you access that feeling, or just something that they feel comfortable doing, so you can teach them to access that state, and then you can use hypnotherapy as a way to connect with that state whilst imagining public speaking. So in that way you can rewrite your programming, if you like, and have access to a state that you want to have in a particular situation. So it's really useful for things like anxiety, for stress, for public speaking. A lot of women lose a lot of confidence, understandably, around menopause. So it's really good for state change. It's really good as a place to explore. You know, if you think about it, we use the mind a lot to explore usually all the things that can go wrong. You know, it's certainly if you're suffering from anxiety, that's what we do. We practice, in a way, all the things that could go wrong in a situation. So hypnotherapy offers a space, a tool to explore things going right. And in that way, you can lay down neural pathways, so you can rehearse things, you know, in a really safe way before you go out and do them. So it's really good for that. It's good for exploring your new identity. You know, I think one of the scariest things and the most exciting things about menopause is that there is a shake-up going on, an invitation or a shove, however you're experiencing it, into something new. And so it's a really good space to be able to explore how you might like to be in that space, in that new way. Again, safely, you know, without getting out there, just like trying on different ways of being. It's brilliant for relaxation. It's brilliant for sleep. It's hypno in Greek means sleep, so it's a fantastic tool for helping you to relearn to sleep. You know, the hormonal changes quite often upset that balance, to reset to a less anxious level. All of these things that can be really useful, and just generally being able to manage stress and access calm really gives our body much more resources in order to cope with all the physical changes. So we're kind of relieving the body of a lot of stress, which gives it more resources to do what it naturally does, which is start to balance out all the hormonal chaos that's going on.
So it sounds like the application actually is really huge across a number of different areas and symptoms that those going through perimenopause and menopause are experiencing. And it's about sort of accessing that a calmer place or a calmer state, or visualizing or exploring that in a safe environment. And I would imagine that in doing that, that reduces your level of anxiety, which can have a lot of positive effects both during menopause and, you know, the experience you have during menopause, but also when you're thinking about, you know, the next phase.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, the menopause, we feel it on an emotional level, on a physical level, and even on a spiritual level of identity. You know, it crosses all of that. And yeah, being able to access a calm state is a really useful tool as a baseline. But you know, and just having that conscious ability to, there are so many things in our mind and therefore in our bodies that we do have control over, that we maybe don't realize we have control over, or we haven't learned to control. So being able to give women, I mean, I particularly work with menopause, but also work in fertility and other areas. I think being able to give people some more control helps with confidence and general feeling of empowerment at this stage where we really need to step into that feeling.
Yeah, that sense of being able to almost take charge, isn't it, and be making your own decisions and feel that you're in control. Yeah,
and understanding what's going on. You know, that was a big part of I don't know that that's necessarily hypnotherapy, but it's what I offer, is helping women to understand what's going on, because I think once we understand, it can be really scary, particularly things like brain fog and all the rest of it. We can feel like, oh gosh, that's it, I'm losing my edge. And once we start to recognize what's actually going on, we can harness that opportunity. You know, the vast amount of studies show that, I mean, the hormones in our life shape our brain. So we've had a particular hormonal pattern going on for at least a couple of decades, and then when that shifts, it shifts our brain, you know, that becomes more malleable, which is why things get lost, people's names, you know, basic information, words, whatever. But it also, and I think this is a really important thing to take on board, it offers us an opportunity, you know, in that shifting, in that reshape, to make changes. I mean, midlife women, you only have to look around. Midlife women are leaving husbands, you know, they are changing careers, they are dyeing their hair pink, you know, there's all kinds of opportunities where it's a real, yes, it's an invitation, it's an opportunity to make changes. It's the perfect time to sort out old patterns that you want to get rid of. And hypnotherapy is a great tool for that.
Yeah, because I guess it gets you to that space, doesn't it, where you clear off things that are perhaps taking up a lot of your brain's energy and space, and therefore you've got that space to then look at these other things.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know you're going to give us a demonstration of or share with us one of your techniques in a minute. But just before we do that, I was wondering, are there times when some women come to you and they find it difficult to get into this sort of exploratory type mindset?
Do you mean in terms of accessing hypnotherapy, or how far they're willing to go?
Or they have so much. We know that menopausal women often have so much going on in their lives. You know, there's work, there might be kids, there might be caring for elderly parents, and they've just got so much going on. Do some of them find it difficult to be able to, I guess, clear their minds, to be able to focus in on one thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle to, I'll take this two ways. First of all, the biggest obstacle to hypnotherapy is that people worry about getting it right. But hypnotherapy is about accessing the way that you think. So a typical example would be someone who doesn't visualize, who doesn't find it easy to picture things, would think, oh gosh, well, I can't do visualization. But actually, we're working with the way that you think. So if we're working with your brain and you don't visualize, then visualizing is not necessary to the way that your brain works, you know. So we focus on things like feelings or sounds, or, you know, your inner voice, your inner monologue. So that usually in the first session, I'm able to break that down with people. Sometimes people come with a bit of nerves about, am I doing it right? And so that's a really important thing to get straight. And yeah, touch wood, I haven't had anybody who hasn't been able to access it. The other part of that question is, how far people are willing to go, or how far people want to go. I think that people come with their own goals, what they want to achieve, and that will vary depending on what they think is possible. So sometimes for me, I might feel like I could take somebody further, but actually they go as far as they want to go and they're happy with it, if that makes sense. So I think, and sometimes, you know, I had a lovely experience with a woman who I worked with, and she booked in a couple of years after I worked with her. And actually she booked in just to tell me that how much her life had changed. She just wanted to come back, and it was lovely because at the time, I didn't feel I shifted her as much as I would have wanted to. She was happy with what she got at the time, but I would have liked more for her. But it kind of filtered in its own time, and over the next couple of years, things that we'd worked on together kind of just made their way. So I think everybody has their pace that's right for them, and they access what they're ready to access, and, you know, the benefits can keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with coaching in general, isn't it? And with the brain, it takes things away from the session, is still working on them, particularly if you're someone who reflects a lot afterwards, perhaps not always in the moment. And And it sounds really important that you're meeting the woman at the point where they feel comfortable, and it can be tailored to them, their unique experience, how their brains work. So
absolutely, I think that has to be, and what they want to get out of it is always, it's always my first question. What do you want? And then we work towards those changes.
Yeah. Okay, so very excited about this next bit. So you're going to share a technique that is particularly useful, I think, for reducing levels of anxiety, which I can think of with lots of different symptoms. That would be something that would be useful. So I'm going to turn my camera off so you've got the full screen, and then I will turn it back on afterwards, if that sounds okay.
Yeah.
All right, I will hand over to you. Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background about this technique before we do it. So most people have heard of or are familiar with the concept of a trigger. So a trigger being something that would spark off anxiety or stress or worry or some kind of response like that. And a trigger is, and this is one of, it's a really good way of explaining how we can work with hypnotherapy. So a trigger is a natural response of the brain. The brain is constantly learning, and it's making connections between things as a way of protecting us. So in the case of a trigger, if you've had a bad experience with something, if something's happened to you that made you feel uncomfortable or nervous or hurt or whatever, your brain will remember that. And next time you see anything it associates with that, it's going to trigger off the fight or flight response to help you run away, get away from it. In modern life, that sometimes becomes complicated because some of the difficult things that we are faced with, we kind of need to stick with, or we can't run away from. But in primitive life, that would have been a good thing. So a trigger might be the sound of someone's voice. It might be a particular word. Phobias are a really good example of that. And the brain learns and it repeats this response, and it triggers you into the fight or flight response. And Deb Dana, who is a wonderful woman who has studied polyvagal theory, which is the theory of the different states that we are in. So fight or flight would be one, freeze would be another, and then the relaxation response, the one where we're kind of calm and everything and connected, and everything is good in our world. And she coined the phrase glimmers, and a glimmer is the opposite to a trigger. It's the thing that kind of tells our bodies, tells our nervous system that we're safe. So a glimmer would be anything, it is those, they're quite often just very tiny little moments, little micro moments where you just, it might be the sight of, quite often it's nature things. It might be the sight of water, light reflecting on water. It might be the sound of a loved one's voice. It might be a particular piece of music that you listen to, or the sound of laughter, or it could be that moment where you sit down after work and you drink a cup of tea. It could be the face of a pet. Within your day, there will be little things that just bring you that little flash of either joy or safety or security, a warm hug, anything like that, comfort food. So the idea of glimmers and the way that we can use glimmers, remember we were talking about hypnotherapy being about accessing states. So particularly around anxiety, what is happening at menopause, and the reason why we tend to feel more stressed and more anxious, is that not only is the stress response triggered by things in our environment and our thoughts, it's also triggered by changes in our biology, changes in our bodies. And we know right now there are a lot of changes going in our body, and there's a part of the brain called the insula, and the insula its job is basically to check in on all your different systems and ask the question, is everything okay? Or at least that's one of its jobs. And as it does that, during perimenopause, some of your systems are going, I do not know what is going on. You know, everything's a bit haywire, hormones, what have you. And the response to that is that it will trigger the stress response, because the stress response is a great kind of, it heightens your alertness, your awareness, and it's on the lookout for, okay, well, what do we need to be aware of? So this is constantly being triggered during perimenopause, which is one of the causes of anxiety. And like I say, things that maybe didn't stress you before are now, because you're now in this heightened state where you're picking up on these things. So it becomes really important to know what your glimmers are. What are those things that reset you? What are those things that tell your nervous system, actually, I'm safe? You know, actually, I'm okay. And so, you know, there's a couple of things that you can do. I think just being aware of that, you start to notice those moments in your day where you just kind of go, for a moment. And you can invite more of them, you know, if there's a particular, I don't know, maybe something you see, you look at it more. If there's a particular bit of nature, you get out there and see it more. If there's a particular piece of music, play it more. If there's, yeah, whatever it is that's bringing you those moments, you want to kind of activate that. And if you can't physically go and do that, what you can do, and we'll do right now, is create an anchor. Because when you imagine doing something, you fire off all the same neural pathways, all the same areas light up as if you were actually doing it. So you can imagine being in that place. You can imagine seeing that person's face, hearing that person's voice, and get the same impact. And what you're essentially doing is just resetting your nervous system again and again. So what we can do with hypnotherapy, in a moment, I'll lead you into a little mini relaxation, and it's just like a guided meditation. You just close your eyes and follow what I say. And then we will anchor that. So you'll just, we'll use a word and a little action, and that will be your kind of trigger, if you like, or the opposite of a trigger into that response, so that you can really easily access that. Okay. So if you are comfortable, just sitting maybe with your feet flat on the floor is a good idea. And then just gently close your eyes. And just begin to take a few breaths. And just notice how your breathing is today. If it's very shallow and irregular or fast, it's likely that you're carrying a little bit of stress or anxiety. And one of the symptoms of the relaxation response is a deeper breathing into your belly and a longer out breath. So you can kind of nudge your breath a little deeper. You can extend that out breath a little bit so it's comfortable, just nudging yourself a little bit further into relaxation. And I would invite you to scan your body now from the top of your head all the way to the tips of your toes. And if you visualize, you can maybe imagine that like a body scan. If you don't, just have a sense of it. That's absolutely fine. And just imagine marking out any areas of stress and tension in this map with a color that represents stress or tension for you. So you've got a little internal map of any tension, any stress. Fantastic. And then as you continue to breathe, I want you to imagine that the air around you is filled with the color of relaxation. And just breathe in that relaxation, that mist of relaxation, so that your whole body is filling with that color of relaxation. You can imagine that as nudging out any areas of tension in as much as you can release those today. Breathing in relaxation, letting go of tension and stress. And I want you to imagine now that you're in some really nice place in nature, somewhere that feels really comfortable for you. Maybe it's a favourite place you have now, somewhere from childhood, somewhere you went on holiday. Just imagine yourself there now. Notice the sounds, the sights, the feelings, the temperature, the feel of your feet on the earth. Any little details that might connect you to this place. And I want you to just imagine drawing a circle on the ground. And you can do that with things that you find in your place. If you're at the beach, you might do it with shells or pebbles. If you're in the woods, twigs or leaves. Use what's to hand, or it might be like you draw a big circle with magic dust or mist or anything at all. And as you step into that circle, I want you just to begin to recollect some of those things that just make you feel safe or happy or in awe. Those little micro moments of joy. Might be a loved one's laugh. Might be the smile of a stranger. Might be a compliment you've received. The sound of water. The glimmer of light on water. The warmth of the sun on the skin. Feel sand under your feet. These are just suggestions, prompts. Maybe there's a piece of music that you listen to that just lifts you up. Song. Maybe it's the feel of a warm hug. A memory of some funny moment you shared with friends. The way your pet greets you. A magical experience you've had. Maybe you saw dolphins or a beautiful bird. A sunset, sunrise. Feel of cool water on a warm day. I just want you to begin to pull in your own experiences of safety, of calm, of joy, connection. And you can curate them in any way you like in this circle. It might just be that you really connect with the feelings of each. Maybe you hear yourself telling yourself about them. Maybe you see images. Maybe there's objects that represent these times for you, but just have a sense of pulling all of these things into your circle and connecting with those feelings of calm and safety and joy. And as you connect with those feelings, I want you to just say to yourself in your mind, my circle. And you could pinch your thumb and forefinger from either hand together. Create a little anchor. Remember, your brain looks for anything that happens in connection with things and will link it. So the post-hypnotic anchor will be your fingers pinching together and the words, my circle. Just feel connected to those wonderful feelings. And just to test it out, I want you to imagine now that you're in some situation in the near future that might have previously made you feel anxious or stressed or worried. And just imagine yourself there now in your own body, so you're seeing through your own eyes, hearing what you But here, just imagining yourself in that situation, and just pinch your fingers, finger and thumb together, and say to yourself, my circle, feeling those nice calm feelings come to you. And just imagine how much difference feeling calm and centered and safe in that situation makes for you. My circle. Post-hypnotic suggestion. Post-hypnotic connection to these wonderful feelings. My circle. And know that the more you use this, the more you strengthen it. And so with all of that in place, you can just begin gently to bring your awareness back into the room, taking some deeper, more energizing breaths, wiggling your fingers and toes, opening your eyes when you feel ready to do so. Getting ready to try that throughout your day, just to strengthen that connection. If you don't feel those feelings immediately, just take your attention to some of those anchors. I'd be really interested to find out how you found that.
Thank you, Kerry. I just found that so soothing, and I think I just felt the tension just sort of went from like across my shoulders. And then when I thought about, a stressful situation, I thought about it from almost a different perspective.
Yeah.
I came at it not from a place of, I don't know, my brain in overdrive, but actually a place where I could really make better decisions, I guess, thinking about that. It was really, really amazing, just very soothing.
Yeah.
And I wonder, sorry, you go, Kerry.
No, just reflection on what you said. I think it's important to remember there's an expression, neurons that fire together wire together. I think because we operate in our conscious mind so much of what we do is sort of automated. So you bring the same set of resources to a certain type of situation, and that can be really helpful. It's a great shortcut, but if you're not bringing the resources that actually help you, then you want to. So if you're bringing stress and anxiety to a particular situation, you will bring that every time until you consciously make that shift somehow. And so it can exactly do what you just described, which is just bring a different perspective and a different way of dealing with something.
I think it's really powerful that you can create that anchor, like have the image of something, like you said, those micro moments that give us joy, and that they might not be physically present, those moments, but you can bring them into that situation to help you. And I imagine that you could do that quite easily in the workplace as well, that you could find moments to be able to, help you if you, we know that a lot of menopausal women are in work and that they really struggle with symptoms in the workplace and anxiety, and that this could really help.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's interesting to recognize in yourself, and I think the more awareness you bring to it, the more helpful it becomes, and the more you're looking for those glimmers, the less you're looking for the triggers. But what we tend to do is rehearse anxiety. If you're in the workplace, for example, and you've got a meeting in the afternoon that's making you nervous, let's say because you're suffering from brain fog and you're worried that you're going to make a fool of yourself, or look like you don't know what you're doing, even though you've got years of experience and you're fantastic at what you're doing. You might spend your whole day imagining how that meeting is going to go. Most people won't be imagining it going well. So not only are you kind of practicing it going wrong because you're wiring your brain in that way, but also you are suspended in that state of stress for not only the time that you're in the meeting, which might actually, by the way, go fine, but for the whole day. So by choosing to look for those micro moments of glimmers, or by taking time out to just check in with those things, you shift your whole physiology.
Yeah,
It really makes a difference.
It's about looking for those glimmers. I like that word glimmer, isn't it? And I'm
It's
sure this is
great.
resonating with a lot of people. So just to sort of wrap us up today, Kerry, I mean, this has been a really great conversation today. What's one key message you could leave our listeners with when they're thinking about hypnotherapy and menopause?
Okay, I'm going to actually use it to plug a book that I love, which I don't actually get any commission or anything, but I love the concept, and it's a book by Dr. Luann Brizandine, and it's called The Upgrade. And I really, really like the whole premise of the book. She's a scientist and a doctor, and she studies brains. And particularly she focuses on the female brain, and this is on what's happening with the female brain at menopause. And the whole premise is that there is an invitation here to upgrade. It's not guaranteed, it's not automatic. There is, as I described earlier, there's this kind of opening, this opportunity to shift at this time. And there is a lot that you can do to support growth and to support expansion and to support moving into something bigger and better. But also a lot of the experiences that we have around menopause do make us kind of want to shrink and get small and stop doing the things that actually help us expand, like learning and growing and socializing and doing and exercising and eating well. And so there's an awful lot that you can do at this time. And so that would be my final thought. Hypnotherapy is one fantastic tool for that, but so many things, to just find your own path to manage the symptoms and to look for those invitations of where you can kind of expand, where you can make changes in your life that are going to be beneficial to you.
Love that expansion piece. That's a great final sort of visualization and thought to end on. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today on Meno Musings. It's been lovely to have you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So for those who are interested in finding out more about hypnotherapy or would like to chat to Kerry about the work that she does around supporting people through perimenopause and menopause, please do get in contact with Kerry. I will include all of her details when I drop the podcast. In the meantime, do check out Kerry's website, wombservice.co.uk. So that's womb, WOMB, service.co.uk. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next month.